This week I'll be giving my speech on increasing the size of the military. The military has been downsizing since the end of the year of 2011 due to budget cuts. The Army, Air Force, and Marine Corps have been directly affected by these cuts ever since. Over the last 6 years, the military has been doing more with less, keeping the missions they have been performing since the Iraq and Afghanistan war kicked off 15 years ago. The United States is still in Afghanistan with 8,400 troops compared to over 100,000 troops at the end of 2011. Currently, the mission in Afghanistan is more of an advise and assist mission. There isn't much U.S. involvement during operations. The U.S. is mentoring their Afghan counterparts, assisting them with training of Afghan forces. Iraq and Syria have roughly 6,000 American troops deployed between the two countries in order to fight the Islamic State. At the height of the Iraqi war, in the early 2000s, there were as many as 130,000 troops. Right now, the military is struggling in a few categories, such as readiness and training. Due to the budget cuts over 6 years ago, soldiers, sailors, and airmen and Marines are not getting the funding that they used to get for training. In the height of the Iraqi and Afghani war, it almost seemed like there was no limit on funding or training. Units were able to get the items necessary for troops and equipment. Equipment includes vehicles, aircraft, and weapons. Today, units are struggling to keep all of their assigned equipment ready in order to perform their mission. Troops are only getting fielded what they need if they are slated for a deployment. The problem with this is the individual soldier doesn't have much time to train with their assigned equipment. Now, when soldiers are fielded new equipment, it is issued to them. It is issued 2 months prior to a deployment, or it is issued when they arrive in theater. Training is another aspect of readiness. Training is not limited to qualifying with an assigned weapon or assessing physical fitness. It also includes military occupational proficiency. Most vehicles and aircraft are maintained by the troops, and with the budget cuts making it hard to get parts, troops cannot get proficient at their jobs. The 101st Combat Aviation Brigade out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky is one of the many brigades affected by the drawdown. Colonel Craig Aliyah, the brigade's commander, explained that, so what you have is an inexperienced maintenance group that has to support a high op tempo of flight hours, and it has a wear and tear on the force, in reference to Fort Campbell losing the 159th Combat Aviation Brigade. He also goes on to explain the demands on his brigade has increased since losing the 159th Combat Aviation Brigade, saying that he has to perform the mission of 200 rotary wing aircraft when he only has 100. The brigade is also short on pilots, which is not just the brigade. The Army is also short over 700 pilots. This is just one example of how the drawdown has affected the military, and there are other cabs in a similar situation, just like the 101st Cab. Recently, the Army unveiled plans to increase the number of troops with a recruiting goal of 6,000 soldiers within the next 7 months. The Army plans to spend $300 million in advertising and bonuses in order to meet this recruiting goal. 6,000 is the largest number within the fiscal year since 1973. By October, the goal is to have 476,000 soldiers in the Army, which is up by 16,000 from 2016, which was 460,000. In the past, when the Army needed to make recruiting goals, the money came from the training budget. However, Major General Snow said that won't happen this time. And there is very clear guidance from the leadership in our conversations that there is no desire to lower standards. The biggest complaint from senior leaders in the past 10 years is the fact that training has been easy and it is more or less a check the block to get soldiers to their units. Breaking down the cost, the Army will spend $200 million in bonuses and $100 million in advertising. With the effort to bring in more soldiers, the Army will spend another $10 million in order to create and properly resource recruiters to make the expansion of the Army happen. However, with the Army in the process of building itself back up, the cost would be necessary. Right now, the $300 million budget is still in the approval process from Congress. Building up the military is very important when it comes to the security of the United States. Soldiers are currently doing more with less, but it is not ideal, and it could lead to problems with readiness if it continues. Soldiers will become more stressed because of repeated deployments and training rotations. Right now, the Army is doing 9-month deployments and 18 months of dwell time, which means their next deployment should not be for another 18 months. The military in general is tired, and increasing the number of troops is a start to rebuilding our depleted military.